all of these things that are happening in this stage of our life in midlife are changing because of the hormonal changes. Heavy cardio spikes cortisol, and cortisol is not bad. I mean, it plays a role in our body. So I know we all say cortisol and we all go, oh, no, not cortisol. But, but at this stage, if you're doing like really heavy cardio, and it doesn't help because it starts to then pull the weight toward the middle. What used to happen when we were younger is estrogen would temper the cortisol response in our body. And now the estrogen isn't there, or it's jumping around crazy. So sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. So that's not working. And then by cutting calories, you're basically telling your body at a stage where you don't have the hormones that are regulating all of this, that I better hold on to this because I'm not getting enough food. So you're not getting enough food. It's going around your middle and you don't know why.
Welcome to the Self-Care Goddess podcast, where healing stories, practical self-care strategies, and science-backed tools to regulate stress, feel calm, grounded, and energized come together to help you reclaim your vitality. I'm your host, Rita Savoya, holistic nutritionist, trauma-informed breathwork coach, and founder of Breathwork Barista. This podcast is for women who are ready to restore their energy and radiance, reconnect with their bodies, reawaken their inner power, and redefine self-care as a way of being. Through science meets soul practices, restorative mind-body tools, and real stories of transformation, we'll explore how true well-being can help you live with more joy, vibrant health, and authentic connection to yourself and those you love. Take a deep breath in, let it go, and let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Self-Care Goddess podcast with today's theme, why diets stop working after 40 and what to do instead. Super excited to introduce our next guest here on the show. But before we start, as you know, let's gift ourselves a few moments of just checking in by following our breath, flowing in through the nose, a little slower, a little deeper than usual. And then let's sigh it out with a slight sigh through the mouth. If you feel comfortable, you can lower your gaze and just look at one spot or even close your eyes, literally tuning out what is happening in front of you, what happened before this podcast, what's going to happen after. I invite you to just gift yourself this presence, this moment of just being, nothing to do, nothing to sort out, nothing to solve. Just be checking in with your body by following your breaths a little slower, a little deeper than usual. Breathing in through the nose, and then letting it go with a gentle sigh. See if you can extend the exhales, letting your body know that you got this. You're safe. It'll get sorted. Everything will be okay. Allowing the exhales to soften any areas of your body that you're feeling tension or stress or tightness. Now I invite you to channel the breaths, so the inhales and exhales, into the area of the heart. Allowing these inhales and exhales to energize this incredible organ that's keeping you alive without asking for anything in return every single hour, day, in this moment of immense gratitude for your heart. I now invite you to visualize someone that you're grateful for today. Gratitude is such a powerful emotion. And I invite you to send them all the love, the gratitude, and appreciation for being in your life and always being there for you, especially when you needed them the most. And now I invite you to send the same amount of love, gratitude, and appreciation you sent this loved one. Send it back to you. Fill your heart, energize your heart with this incredible, powerful emotion of gratitude. On your next inhale, flutter your eyes open. Thank you for taking that time out. Very quick, not even 3.5 minutes. So today's guest is someone who is helping women redefine what it means to thrive in midlife. Not by chasing quick fixes, but by building strength, confidence, and lasting health. Jeanne Phares is an author, certified health and wellness coach, and a certified menopause coaching specialist who is passionate about helping women understand what's changing in their bodies and, more importantly, what they can do about it. Through evidence-based education, she empowers women to navigate menopause with confidence by focusing on strength training, nutrition, metabolism, and healthy aging. Before dedicating her career to women's wellness, Jeanne spent nearly 30 years as a CPA and business leader, combined with more than 4 decades of personal strength training and her experience as a leukemia survivor. She brings a unique perspective that blends science, resilience, and real-life experience. Her message is simple but powerful. Midlife isn't the time to give up on your body. It's the time to learn what it needs to know now. She's also the author of several best-selling books, including Strength Training for Women Over 50, Eat for Strength for Women Over 50, and Menopause Doesn't Have to Suck, helping thousands of women move beyond confusion and reclaim their health with practical, sustainable habits. And beyond her work, Jeanne has a wonderful sense of humor. She's been happily married to her husband for nearly 40 years, even though they tied the knot just 3 weeks after meeting. That's a story I want to know about. She's an 80s girl at heart, so it's no surprise her life soundtrack is Express Yourself by Madonna. And if there's one guilty pleasure she can't resist, it's buying beautiful fabric for sewing projects she hasn't quite started yet. Jeanne, what a beautiful bio. Welcome to the Self-Care Goddess podcast. It is a pleasure to have you here. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for this opportunity.
Yes. So much to get into because this topic is really, really hot. I mean, I'm so grateful and glad that we talk about menopause now on podcasts way more than we have a decade ago. And so there's just so many different facets of menopause. So before we get right into it, I'm just very curious. You spent 30 years as a CPA before reinventing yourself as a health coach specializing in menopause. So what inspired that transformation for you?
Well, in accounting, I worked in a very large firm, and I always coached women. I was coached by people above me, and in the firm that I was in, you always develop the people that are coming up behind you. And I always still have women that I worked with call me, and ask me for, advice or help with something. So transitioning to coaching was very natural. One time a gal called me. She's like, "Jeanne, I want to take you to lunch. You gave me the best advice." And I was like, "Oh crap, what did I tell her?" And so we went to lunch, and then she was pregnant at the time, and I had encouraged her to go ahead and get her MBA, which is something she wanted to do. And it ended up really helping her career. So I liked accounting. I mean, it was a good career for a very long time. But 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And I'd always been strength training. I'd always been healthy, a runner, very active. And I was studying nutrition actually when I got diagnosed because I thought being a nutritionist was going to be my second career. I was 2 classes away from finishing a master's degree. And when I found out I had leukemia, and I asked my doctor, I'm like, how did I get cancer? I am the healthiest person I know at 55 at that point. And he said, well, leukemia, we don't know where it comes from. And thank goodness it's not something I would pass to my kids because that was my number one worry. But he said, because you're in such good shape, because you are not overweight, you don't have high blood pressure, you don't have a lot of these comorbidities that start to affect us as we get older, you can, take the harshest treatment and likely be a candidate for a better outcome. And, spoiler alert, here I am 8 years later and I'm cancer free. And that really stuck with me because I know most of the women listening are not going to have a health crisis like I did. But sometimes we treat perimenopause and menopause like a health crisis or like a disease. And it is not. It is a transition in our life that can be managed. And since I'd always strength trained and always loved health and nutrition, it just seemed like a logical step for me to do this. And then when I wrote my first book, which is Strength Training for Women Over 50, and I've almost sold 10,000 copies now.
Wow.
And I'll just show the book.
Amazing. Congratulations.
And I would listen to or read the comments that people would leave. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's such a hole here. There is this group of people that are just hungry for quality information. And I can help serve that because I can do that. And that's, it's just so gratifying.
Sure. And I love that you saw the need based on your first book and now you're focusing more on menopause. So let's talk a little bit about menopause. What You feel that most women, that's what I hear as well, when they reach that perimenopausal, menopausal, what things that used to work for them no longer are working. And they're maybe even working against them. What's happening there?
Yeah. So perimenopause, and we say menopause is sort of like this global word, but really perimenopause is what happens from the time you're, late 30s, early 40s until you hit menopause. Menopause is actually the day that you have not had a period for 12 months. And then everything after that is postmenopause. But we just call it all menopause because it's just easier. And when you start to hit this age, you realize that you start putting on weight around the middle a little bit. Maybe you're not sleeping as well, and it's hard to find good information. My daughter, for example, when I was visiting her, she's 44 now, and this was a few years ago, she was telling me all this stuff that was going on with her. And I said, well, Bethany, you're in perimenopause. And she says, well, I talked to my doctor, and my doctor said she didn't think that was it. And I'm like, what kind of doctor are you seeing? And she said, well, she's an OBGYN. I'm like, Bethany, OB means she delivers babies. She's not your doctor anymore. I said, you need to find a doctor that specializes in women in midlife. And the next time I saw her, she had found this, different kind of medical professional. And she says, it was just so lovely to be able to tell her all the things that were going on with me and not have her treat me like, I was crazy. And, that's what's really important. So when we think about, we're starting to put on a little bit of weight, and maybe like my daughter, you weren't getting good information or you didn't know where to look. And you think, okay, well, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would just, hike up my cardio, cut my calories, and within, a few weeks, I'd be back in my skinny jeans. But that's working against us now because of the hormonal shifts that were happening. And that's what sort of led me into the whole menopause thing, because I realized very quickly through researching my book that all of these things that are happening in this stage of our life and midlife are changing because of the hormonal changes. So heavy cardio spikes cortisol, and cortisol is not bad. I mean, it plays a role in our body. So I know we all say cortisol and we all go, oh, no, not cortisol. But at this stage, if you're doing like really heavy cardio and it doesn't help, because it starts to then pull the weight toward the middle. Well, what used to happen when we were younger is estrogen would temper the cortisol response in our body. And now the estrogen isn't there, or it's jumping around crazy. So sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. So that's not working. And then by cutting calories, you're basically telling your body at a stage where you don't have the hormones that are regulating all of this, that I better hold on to this because I'm not getting enough food. So you're not getting enough food. It's going around your middle and you don't know why. Everything you used to do that worked like, clockwork isn't working. So when we understand these shifts we need to make in midlife, it is not that difficult to lose weight. It's just your body has changed, your biology has changed. And, you're not broken. You're just in a different phase of life and it needs a different response.
I love that. Thank you for reminding us that. And it's really interesting that in Japan, they call it a second spring menopause or postmenopause. So it's a beautiful opportunity for women to, obviously they're no longer menstruating and don't have to deal with the shifts and the constant monthly hormonal shifts that happen. And so can we expect more stability, menopause or postmenopause?
Well, yes. I mean, if you start a program where dealing with the symptoms of menopause, and I think that's kind of what happens so often, is we look for quick fixes. We look for, these, 30-day drop 10 pounds kind of programs, when we realize that this time of our life, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we make sustainable, consistent changes that fit into the life we live. And then we can lose the weight and we can keep it off and we can keep doing the things that we love to do, which is, really, when you think about it, I think the way the Japanese think about it is it's like, this is not a bad time of your life. This is a fantastic time of your life. And if you are doing the things to manage your hormonal symptoms, then yeah, you can not have, these things temper down. I mean, eventually postmenopausal women have less and less symptoms because, your body is sort of settled into, and the estrogen and the progesterone aren't jumping around anymore because they're pretty much stable or gone at very low levels. And, when you look at like the level of estrogen when it's the highest and then the drop, and like after 50, it really drops. You've got to do something to replace what estrogen did in your body. And that's where diet and nutrition come in, diet and exercise come in.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about this because women, I feel like, are always so bombarded with all kinds of conflicting advice, especially on social media, between like fasting. Should we be fasting as women? Detoxing, all different like supplementation trends. And of course, HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And we can like talk about all of these or whichever one you feel is more important. So, but I had a really interesting question. So I taught a workshop and the lady put her hand up and she's like, Rita, I love this. I understand this. This is great. It's explaining a lot. However, if we are supposed to be depleting these hormones naturally, right? They're supposed to just leave our bodies and we're not supposed to produce as many. Why are we doing that? Why are we replacing them with HRT? And I was like, that's a good question. How would you answer that, Jeanne?
I think whether or not to use HRT is a discussion between you, right, and your healthcare provider. But, every woman is a little different. And depending on how severe your symptoms are, being able to temper them with some replacement. And it isn't so much, this is the thing I think that we need to understand is that it's not just declining. So you're kind of getting used to it. It's doing this. And where progesterone used to work with estrogen to do something, maybe it's a month where they're like this. Maybe it's a month where they're in tune. Maybe it's, what I'm saying. And so the HRT is just a tool, like all of the other things that we're going to talk about, to help you, modulate and regulate how you're going. So, it's like, why would you take an aspirin if you have a headache? Well, because you don't want to keep having a headache, because headache, it's not unnatural. It's something that happened in your body, but you don't want to keep suffering from it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't use HRT because I haven't needed to, but I would certainly tell any woman that it's a discussion she should have with a doctor that understands midlife women, like find the kind of doctor my daughter found. But don't let that be your only modality. If you want to, women don't come to me and say, hey, I want to live to 120, right? They say, I don't want to end up in a nursing home. And we do that through, strength training and protein forward nutrition. And something else you said about, like the diets and the supplements and all of that. I think supplements have a place, but I think they're sort of last on the list because a lot of supplements, because they're not regulated, you don't know if they have in them what they say they have in them. And I mean, I subscribe to sites that give me, scientific background and tell me sort of like the real thing about various supplements. Anyway, I probably over answered the question about HRT, but I think it's a tool.
I love that. No, you've answered it. Yeah, I love that for sure. How about your thoughts on fasting, especially during the transition?
What I hear a lot is, I did intermittent fasting and I lost weight. And then I'm like, oh, are you still doing it? No, because it's hard to do. I always worry about with cleanses and fasting. What are you doing to your nutrition and your, and like your vitamins and enzymes and things that amino acids that you get from your food, right? Are you getting enough when you're doing these things? And are they sustainable? And that's like the number one question. Don't sign up for something that wants you to change all the things all at once. Because one, it's too hard to do that. It floods you with stuff where, okay, is this going to be sustainable? Can I do this consistently? And it's not about perfection, right? It's about, can I do this consistently through the rest of my life in order to live the second half of my life, the third trimester, whatever you want to call it, and age on my own terms the way I want to. And I think that's the number one question to ask yourself before you sign up for any of this stuff. And, it's like, even for me, I say, eat a protein forward diet. Well, what does that mean? Because a protein forward diet also means you better increase your water intake and your fiber intake. So when we get information from sound bites and we think, oh, I'm going to start eating more protein without sort of understanding the whole picture. But it's like, once you understand the whole picture, then it's like, okay, what do I want to do first? And then I get that into my life and I work it into the life I have. And then, okay, now what do I need to do? So it's small, consistent steps that get you to being able to live a life that doesn't feel like, oh, I'm constantly dieting, I'm constantly exercising, I'm constantly doing all this stuff that I don't really want to be doing. But I've incorporated into the life that I live.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition here. Why is protein intake or adequate protein intake or optimal protein intake, why is that so important for us? And I guess you'll tie it into the strength training. But yeah, you let me know why is that so important?
Well, as we age, we do not absorb the nutrients from our food as well. It's just part of aging. So the amino acids that we get from protein that build our muscles. So we need to, I always tell women, just put the protein on your plate first and then build around it. And, you know, take 2 bites of your protein and then 1 bite of the other things on your plate and then 2 bites of your protein. And that way, if you get full, you've gotten protein in.
I like that.
Optimally, what we want to work for is like 30 grams of protein at every meal. On average, there are calculations you can do if you want to get, really technical about it, like some people do. Some people are like, just tell me how much to eat. But we want to build muscle. So we start losing muscle in our 30s and we don't even know it. We're just losing muscle because, of this metabolic changes in our body. So strength training, if we want to build muscle, needs to be fortified with the protein intake. So they kind of work hand in hand together. And women always say, oh, I don't want to strength train because I'm going to end up looking like a man. And I always say, that will never happen. It's like sometime a guy told Arnold Schwarzenegger that he didn't want to end up looking like him. And Arnold Schwarzenegger says, you're never going to end up looking like me. So, women have about 1/10 of the testosterone that men have. And we're also start losing our testosterone as women in our 20s. So if you've noticed like your sex drive declining or, your ability to build muscle declining, that's why that's there too. So, when women say, well, I just want to get toned. Well, really, that's what's going to happen. I follow a woman on YouTube and I just love her. She's in her 50s and she's very cut. And I look at the comments.
I'm curious, is it Dr. Stacy Sims?
No,
Okay.
it's not. And I read her comments and people are like, Jesus, her arms look like a man's. And I'm like, I would kill or die to look like that. But, I don't have the genetics. And so I'm always trying to soften it for women. I'm responding to all her comments and like, okay, one, that body is the result of, one, genetics, two, an extremely disciplined, lifelong strength training and diet protocol. So, take her information. It's usually quality information. But don't worry, you're not going to end up looking like a man. If you do everything she tells you to do, you will not end up, one, looking like her or a man.
Right, right. So I'm curious to, we'll talk about training in just a moment, but just in terms of protein, curious, what are your thoughts on animal versus plant-based protein? Is one better than the other, and what recommendation would you give someone that is mostly plant-based?
I try to eat primarily plant-based. I do eat meat. I will tell you that protein is protein and you can get it from plant sources. But we tend to want to eat less as we age. And we may find out that we're not as hungry, especially if you're on a GLP-1. And if you want to eat all your protein from plants, you are going to have to eat a lot of food. So, so what you can do is you can look for, really, as high a protein as you can. In my books, I usually list, protein sources from plants and protein sources from meat. For me, it's way too much work to try to get all my protein from plants. Like pea protein is like, if you want to limit your animal protein, you can get protein powder that's made from pea, green peas. You can, when you buy your greens at the store, you can buy high protein greens, which are, a little bit more protein than just buying, lettuce or spinach or kale. So there are ways to do it, but it takes a lot of work, I think, for me. And so if you don't have a ton of time, and let's face it, I mean, as women, we're caring for, especially in midlife, maybe we still have children at home. Maybe we have children in college. Maybe we have a partner. Maybe we have a career outside the home. Maybe we're dealing with elderly parents. And all these things, all these plates we have in the air that if we weren't there would probably all come crashing to the ground. And then you tell me now I have to figure out how to get, 100 grams of protein a day by eating greens or quinoa. That's a lot of work. But if you have the time and that's important to you, then you'll make the time to figure it out. I personally don't have that time or that inclination. So while I do look for plant-based, higher protein plant-based to add into my diet, so instead of having white rice with dinner, I'll have quinoa, as my carb. But anyway,
Mm,
probably asked and answered, but that's my feeling on it.
I love that. I love that. So, do you also recommend shakes, like protein shakes, if you cannot? Because I'm actually pescatarian, then I can't have fish every day. So I try to have it at least twice, 3 times a week. I eat eggs, so that thank God for that, because eggs are these super power nutritious foods. So that's great. But what are your thoughts on protein shakes? Because sometimes we're on the go. So protein shake. And I don't know if you've noticed on social media now, there's like this trending meme about protein shake and how incredibly bad it is for your kidneys and how it's putting so much burden on your kidneys. So what are your thoughts on that, on protein shakes and what's circulating on social media these days?
Well, one, I love protein shakes. I have one nearly every day. And remember when I said, we talk about, like protein, and that meant more water and more fiber. So protein is hard on your kidneys. And as we get older, we want to make sure our kidneys are functioning. So if you're going to be eating more protein, you need to be having more water. Well, if the liquid in your protein shake is water, then, you know, if you're putting like, milk or soy milk or, some other kind of, coconut milk or whatever people put in it, I would just switch it to water.
Mm,
The more protein you eat, the more water you need to drink.
it's a good tip, Jeannie. I like that.
And but I've done research on this. Masticating vegetables doesn't, ruin the nutritional value of them. Let's face it, when you're chewing it up, you're masticating it, right? You're breaking it down into, something you can swallow. And so I think protein shakes are almost a must have, especially if you're just starting out, because I'll tell you, when I tell people you can, try to get 30 grams of protein on a plate, that's a lot. So if you can get that out of the way in the morning with your shake while you're running around, taking kids to school or driving yourself to work or whatever it is you're doing in the morning, I think it's a must have.
I like that. Meeting your client where they're at and then and educating them. And you're right. If they're really committed, they'll find a way. So that's why I love meal prepping and just washing even those vegetables ahead of time so that it's just quicker to do. And yeah, I like that because I usually do add milk to my shakes. Some of the pea protein, oh my gosh, horrendous. Like they are the rice and ugh. So I'm actually ingesting or tolerating dairy more. So I went back to whey protein and I'm like, wow, this is so delicious compared to the
Really?
yeah, it's so tasty. Anyway, that's funny. So let's talk a little bit about strength training now. And again, most women that come to me, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to do it because I don't want to bulk up." And it's just like you're not going to bulk up. You really have to, like, again, food, the nutrition comes into play to like really be really really bulky. So, what are some important things that we can do for when it comes to strength training for that beautiful transition that we are all going to face at some point in our lives?
Well, think about why you're doing it first. Because you want to age on your own terms. You want to continue to do the things you love to do as you age. You don't want to be a burden for your family. And I'm 63 years old. When my mom was my age, because women in that generation didn't really know this stuff, they didn't have the resources we have. She was, very feeble. She walked and she was hunched over. And, when she walked, you had to hold her arm. And that was very informative to me as I was growing up and realizing that women are, people in general and women are living longer, that this is not a nice to have. And I don't want to, ring alarm bells or anything, but if you only have time to do one thing, please start lifting weights. You're not going to bulk up, but you will keep yourself strong for aging. And there's just nothing better you can do for your body. And we'll add all the other stuff in, support it with diet and water and fiber and nutrition and meditation and all the things that we can do. So I would say a full body workout twice a week should take you 30 minutes. I would say if you don't want to get hurt, lift lighter weights slower. So if you've worked out in your life in the past and maybe you just aren't doing it anymore, then you have some information and skills already. I always give women like a menu. So we want to do a push, a pull, a squat. These are the ways you can get these muscles. Pick the one you like to do. The last thing you want is think, I have to do, tricep kickbacks and I hate that. Well, there's 10 things I can give you to do for triceps. Pick the one that you like to do.
For me, it's the hip thrusts. Oh my God. Every time it's time for those, I'm like, no, please, someone be on that machine so I don't need to do them. And then nobody's on the machine.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so important.
Yeah.
For me, it's a dual purpose. It's like, I don't think there's any shame in being a little, vain, if for lack of a better term. It's like, I want to look good in my clothes. I'm not dead yet. I still want to wear nice looking clothes. I want to be able to go out and play pickleball with my friends and walk my dogs and that sort of thing. And so this is important to me. It's important for my life. And that's how I keep it in my head. But for people that have never worked out before, I always say, do your reps slower with less weight. If you're doing a bicep curl and, we used to say exercise to failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the bodybuilder's mentality because they want to squeak out that last little bit of growth. But current research for women in midlife says leaving 1 to 2 in the tank is actually a better way to go. So there's 2 concepts here I want to talk about. This idea of, if you get to like 10 reps and you think, I might be able to do 1 or 2 more, stop. There's no point in eking out that last bicep curl and then hiking your shoulder up because, right, your form is not good. You're going to end up hurting yourself. But if you put that 10-pound weight down and pick up a 5-pound weight, and instead of doing like a 3-second up and 3-second down, try doing 10 seconds up and then 10 seconds down. And I guarantee you'll get 6 reps out in 2 minutes and you will feel the burn and you will be doing muscle building. And this is a concept that's been around for a long time. The gentleman that, developed this or was the first to write about it named it super slow. So you'll hear a lot of people, change the name a little bit. And about half of my workout, I do super slow because
in the actual set. So you'll do like 6 normal and then the last 4 you do super slow?
I do 6 total.
Super slow.
A super slow. Some things it's harder to do super slow because you just, like if you're doing calf raises, it's really hard to lift your calf for 10 seconds. And then also there's exercises that I really like. I love deadlifts for some reason. I love the curve on the back of the hamstring. And, I work really hard to have that. That's where my vanity comes out. And, so if you have something like that, then do it the way you want. If you have something you don't really care to do or, you can't find another way to do it, try super slow. If you're brand new to strength training, try super slow. And then I want to talk about gyms for 2 reasons. In my book, I tell people how to put together a home gym, and I do, my social media posts on that too. I have a home gym. It's behind my sofa in my TV room. And it's not huge. It doesn't have a bunch of stuff in it, but I can get my whole workout done there. Going to a gym is nice because, one, they have all the machines and there's a social aspect to it. And we know that as we age, social interaction is probably the most important thing for us to keep our brains sharp. And a lot of women will say, well, I'm embarrassed to go to the gym because there's all these fit, beautiful people, young people there. And I want to tell you, when you go into the gym and you're older, no one is looking at you and thinking, why is that old lady here? They are thinking, good for her. What an inspiration.
Exactly.
And when you give yourself that mindset and you go into there and you think, I'm inspiring these people. I might be starting out, or I might be a longtime strength trainer and I'm just coming back to it. Or maybe I'm always strength trained, but I'm in the gym because that's what I love to do. I'm telling you that there is no better feeling. So, figure out what you like. And if you like working out at home because, you don't deal with wiping machines off or whatever, do that. But if you want the social interaction or you want some help, or maybe you want, to work with a trainer or something, or just, watch what other people do and try to learn, go to the gym. There are no strict rules here. There's basic concepts, strength train, protein forward, take care of your sleep. Those are the things you need to do. And then we can dig into, well, how do I do each one of those things in a way that works for me, fits into my life, that I can do consistently for the rest of my life.
Right. I love that. That's so powerful. Super simple. Mic drop right here, Jeannie. That's it. So, but I'm actually curious because you said something really interesting that I'll like, yes, I love this. 30 minutes. That's all we need is 30 minutes. Like we can find 30 minutes out of our day. And how many times a week would you
Twice
recommend?
a week.
That's
I
doable.
tend to do my 30-minute workout twice a week, and then I'll do one workout at home, just lower body, because I like to build the bigger muscles. Because the bigger muscles, muscle burns more fat at rest, than or more calories at rest than fat does. So that's where I come in with that. If I'm trying to keep my weight at a certain level,
And
I
so,
like to do.
yeah, I love that. So, do you also subscribe to one day it's all the pulling muscles, the next day rest, then it's legs, and then it's pushing? Like how do you break out your
I,
week?
I do 2 full body workouts twice a week. I think that if you start doing this, or you've always worked out, and doing that is motivating for you. Like, I talked to a trainer that I work with before, and she's like, I don't understand people that want to do upper body and lower body. Why don't they do front body and back body so that they're not wearing out, the muscles at the top and the muscles at the bottom? And I thought, well, that's smart. I think for that, it's like you need to think about what inspires you when you go to the gym. If you really like pumping out upper body and you want to feel that, but those are the kind of decisions that get people, I think, wrapped around the axle. Like, oh, I'm going to the gym. Oh, am I doing upper body or lower body? Oh, what are my upper body exercises? This is where if you just go with your 8 exercises that get your legs, your bottom, your chest, your shoulders, your biceps, your triceps, and some mobility work, then I think you're fine. And I think that's another misnomer. People think like, oh, I have to be in the gym all the time. I have to be doing all this stuff. I have to eat this way in order to lose weight. You really don't. It's frighteningly simple sometimes if you just start and you don't overcomplicate it.
So true. It's so true. So do you recommend cardio at all, or is it just maybe brisk walks or anything like that? But like cardio where you're going to get your heart rate at a certain level?
Yes. So the heart's a muscle and we need to work it too. And a whole other talk is, heart attacks in women in midlife and how they don't present the way men do and are often undiagnosed. So we want to keep our heart strong. I think, walking uphill is good. I think you should get your heart rate up, but to the point that you can still have a conversation. Maybe not as breathless as you and I are conversing now, but not to the point where you're huffing and puffing and you're like, I can't say hello to the person passing me because and that's something that kind of has to be fine tuned to where you are cardiovascularly. When I first started playing pickleball, I got through a half a game and I had to sit down. And I thought, oh my gosh, my cardiovascular fitness is in the toilet. And now I go and I can play for 2 hours because the more you use the heart, the less harder it works to give you the same effort. So I would say try to walk after a meal because it helps with the glucose response. And if you're walking your dog, my dog likes to stop every half a second and sniff. So that's not really a good, but try to walk fast enough so that maybe you can talk to the person next to you.
Mhm.
You're getting your heart rate up, but you're not trying to get to some crazy amount. I know that sounds a little vague, but it really has to do with where you are cardiovascularly.
And again,
And
Personalized. So your thoughts on HIIT training or sprint, so increasing that heart rate for just brief moments. What are your thoughts on that?
I like it. I like it for like 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
not for a long sustained workout. I
Yeah.
think it's good to push your heart to get it up to, the top of your range, but not to try to stay there and not to try to do that for 30 minutes. And again, I mean, I think when it comes to the heart, it's really important to understand where you are physically first and get recommendations from a healthcare professional. And, but the thing is, I mean, when I wanted to start running, I started out walking and I would walk fast and then I would run for a minute and walk for 5 minutes. And then I got up to where I could run for 2 minutes. And by run, I mean jog, not like all out, crazy. And so you can if you're in good health and you don't have any, you've had a physical and you're in good health, just start off experimenting this way. And your body will tell you, you know, when you can, jog a mile if running is what you like. And I prefer walking and maybe, we're lifting hand weights to get your heart rate up because, our bones are getting thinner. Whether we like it or not. And so if we are strength training, we're helping to build the bone, right? Because that, hitting the long bone. I always tell people if you have a daughter and she's in her teens, early 20s, 30s, tell her to run like she's never run before because that pounding is building the bone and that will help sustain her through menopause. But if you have osteoporosis, or you're starting, you've started losing some bone. I'm really reluctant to say go out and start running and pounding. I would say walk fast, use your hand weights, get that heart rate up. You're trying to strengthen your heart, and that's important.
Right.
But you don't have to be doing, like crazy sprints or anything to get that done.
Yes. Yes. I love that. That is very, very helpful advice. Again, just really reiterating that it's very personalized. So working with someone like you and then having somebody in the medical field as well and personalizing your protocol is so important because yes, these are trends and yes, there's studies, but it's personalization that will really make the difference.
And not everybody is trained in the same way. So, I mean, even personal trainers, I use a trainer I have on and off my whole life, but not all trainers are equal, right? Some of them don't know anything about women in midlife. And
Exactly.
you want to make sure that you know enough so that if you hire a trainer, that they're not putting you into doing something that's going to end up hurting you. And I mean, I've had trainers that, they do all your measurements the first day but they never look back at those measurements. And so that's why kind of an integrated program is
Yeah.
really beneficial. It's like, okay, here are all the pieces. Let's start building the puzzle one piece at a time, but let's not lose sight of this other stuff. But you're right. I mean, it takes a group of mentors
Yes.
or
Yeah.
one good program, which I have, by the way, but anyway, shameless plug.
Course.
To get all the pieces in a way that's, like you said, specialized for you. Every woman is different.
Yep.
And what works for your friend doesn't necessarily work for you.
And you're right. It's working with a professional, of course, alongside your doctor, but also you as a person taking that responsibility, being accountable for your own results. So educating yourself by listening to these podcasts or books or taking your course and working with you. So yeah, I think we are well on our way. I feel really excited to be in this industry in this time. And more people are just really, really keen on learning and finding new ways, new modalities that can really benefit them. So that's why I love having these conversations. So
I do
talk
too.
a little more about what is the most common advice you tend to give your clients, if there is one?
So common advice is start today. Everything doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm, that's
I used to be like, oh, if I was going to start an exercise program, I had to start it on Monday morning.
yeah.
I don't know whether that's, OCD or what, but now it's like, okay, I don't care if it's Wednesday at 5:00. If you have the urge, start doing something today and don't wait. You know what? You'll figure it out as you go. Take it slow. and look for some, good inputs.
Very powerful. That's really powerful, Jeannie. It's true. Just start now. There'll never be a perfect time, right? Because then Monday, something else will come up. So, what are your top 3 non negotiable self care habits that you do on a daily basis to help you stay healthy, energized, and resilient?
So daily, I meditate for 15 minutes every morning. And it took me years to figure out that all meditation was kind of like what we did in the beginning, just sitting and quietly and thinking about, a noise you're hearing, but only focusing on that and doing breathing and getting in touch with your, parasympathetic nervous system. The other thing I do daily is try to get my protein forward nutrition in. And the third thing is to protect my sleep. Sleep like it is your job. Figure out what you have to do to get that full 7, 8, 9, whatever your body needs in. And I also journal, which I used to hate doing because it felt very forced. But now I just sit there, I give myself 10 minutes and I just write whatever I'm thinking about. And now I find myself so often going back to, oh, what was that I was thinking about the other day? And I go back to my journal and I see it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that motivates me for something or inspires me. And I think just keeping in touch with yourself is important, day-to-day things.
Sure. Those are beautiful. So, Jeannie, what is your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for?
I want every woman in midlife to know that her best years are ahead of her and she is in control. She can advocate for herself and she can define that time in her life. And, I don't say that lightly because I know everybody has things going on in their life and everybody has, physical things and family things and, mental things, whatever is going on in your life. But, as someone who used to run marathons, when I got out of the hospital, I was in the hospital for 6 months and then stuck at home for 3 months. And the first time I tried to walk down the street, I had to stop a half a block and sit on the curb. And it was such a blow because I thought, I'll never be the person I was before. And I will tell you that small, consistent steps will get you to be whatever person you want to be. I mean, I'm grateful every day my hair came back. So, it's also celebrate the small wins, whatever they are for you.
Yes, yes, for sure. Thank you for that reminder. And thank you for sharing that vulnerable piece of information with us today. So, where is the best place for people to connect with you, follow you, perhaps even take your program? And I know you also have a little giveaway for our audience. So, tell us about that as well.
So the giveaway is a 5-step confidence guide. So it isn't really about everything we talked about today as much as it is, just feeling good about yourself. And I think in your show notes, if you put the link, they can just link on there and it'll come to them. And in terms of finding me, the website is sagelifestylepress.com. And you can also email me at Jeannie@sagelifestylepress.com. And I'm on TikTok and I'm on Instagram and YouTube. And anyway, there's a lot of places to find me. I try to make sure everybody can find me everywhere. So, yeah.
Good. Okay. So we'll definitely put these in our show notes as well, all the links and on the social media when we share this incredible conversation. So definitely people will be able to find you very easily. Thank you, Jeannie. This was so inspiring. Very great information. I know that you're on top of the latest research. So thank you for sharing that. I've learned some things today for sure. So always a pleasure to speak to someone who's ahead with the research. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Continue inspiring women of all ages. And it is such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I'm so grateful our paths crossed, and I'd love to have you back one day.
Thank you. I love that too. I love talking about this. One other thing, if you go to my website, there's a link to my calendar, and I am happy to do a free 45-minute chat with anybody that has some questions, something they heard in this podcast that they would like to expand on or something that they're concerned about. I would love to offer that to your audience.
Incredible. Yes. And then, of course, there's those resources, the books that you've written
that I'm definitely going to get my hands on. Sound really, really cool and informative. So thank you. That's very generous. 45 minutes. Incredible. So take advantage of that, my beautiful self-care goddesses, if you can, and if it's resonating with you at the moment. I want to thank you again. Have yourself a beautiful rest of the day, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Care Goddess podcast. If today's episode inspired you, share it with another woman who's ready to reclaim her vitality and lead from within. To continue your journey, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with me on ritasavoya.com. Until next time, remember, self-care isn't selfish, it's your superpower. Take a deep breath in, exhale, and keep rising. Ciao for now.